Let's continue with the last few steps of the hero's journey. We're still in stage one, the departure. In a hero's journey, there's almost always a call to action, and then the hero refuses the call for a whole variety of reasons. In Shrek, it's as simple as he doesn't want to leave the swamp. He likes his miry little place, and he doesn't want to go. Let's take a look at the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, and see Luke Skywalker's refusal of the call.
Alderaan? I'm not going to Alderaan. I've got to get home. It's late. I'm in port as it is.
I need your help, Luke. She needs your help. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it, but there's nothing I can do about it right now. It's such a long way from here.
That's your uncle talking.
God, my uncle. How am I ever going to explain this?
Learn about the Force, Luke.
Look, I can take you as far as Anchorhead. You can get a transport there to Mos Eisley or wherever you're going.
You must do what you feel is right, of course.
There is often a call to action which is delivered by a herald, and that herald can take lots of different forms. Sometimes it is an actual character, like Mr. Tumnus in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He's the one that first introduces the idea to the children that they may be more than what they think they are, that they're the daughters of Eve and the sons of Adam. But it can also be the presence of extreme evil, or a shift in the landscape from good to evil or light to darkness. So think about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe again. And the perpetual winter comes to Narnia, courtesy of the White Witch. It never leaves, and that's a good sign that the evil has come. So her presence and the presence of winter could also be considered a herald. Ben Kenobi feels a shift in the Force when Darth Vader enters the scene, and again when the Death Star is activated. Those two can be qualities of a herald. So it doesn't always have to be a person. It can be an action as well. Often there is supernatural aid in the form of an amulet or some kind of a gift, usually presented by an older figure or a mentor. Of course, in The Alchemist, our mentor is Melchizedek, and he's a biblical character. He appears both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, but it can take many different kinds of forms. And just think about the fact that many of these creatures didn't exist before writers wrote them into existence. Oftentimes, the hero doesn't realize the value of the lessons that he or she is learning until much later in the story. So keep that in mind as well. Again, Melchizedek is a character that's really interesting. I didn't know much about him until I read The Alchemist, and then I went and did some research. He first appears in the Old Testament, and he is the one that asks of Abraham to give him 10% of his flock, and that's where in many religious cultures that 10% tithe comes from that story. But he's also timeless. He appears also in the New Testament, which is something that I didn't realize as well. You might want to spend some time thinking about it. The amulets, of course, he gives are Urim and Thummim, which are plucked straight from his breastplate. There is always a crossing of the threshold. It's also called in some stories dismemberment. And they're literally cut off from their old life. They cannot go back because it'd be a really easy choice. Things get hard and the character will just go back and resume the life that he had. But something happens. So Harry Potter crosses on the platform and goes into the magical world, and he can't get back. In A New Hope, Luke Skywalker is going to stay and help his uncle with the farming, but when the stormtroopers come down and they kill everybody on the homestead and burn his home, there's no place for him to stay, and that's when he goes on his adventure. In A Wrinkle in Time, the children are transported off of Earth and into this new dimension, and they can't get back without help. So the last step of the first stage of the hero's journey is called the belly of the whale. And to me, it's one of the harder ones to really understand. It represents the final separation of the hero's old life. According to Joseph Campbell, it's a sort of rebirth with the belly of the whale like a womb. It should mean death, but instead it's a new beginning. It can be a physical challenge. It can be a spiritual challenge, a psychological challenge, but it goes along with the dismemberment in that it completely cuts off that person from the old life. And this is kind of like a new birth of a new person that is able to do things that he or she would not have been able to do before. It's a descent into the dark. Psychologically, the whale represents the power of life locked in the unconscious. I was just watching Finding Nemo with my 2-year-old niece, and I thought it was really interesting that literally Dory and Marlin find themselves in the whale. And of course, it's taken from the biblical story of Jonah and the whale. So what I want you to do as you read The Alchemist is I want you to look for these steps of the first stage of the hero's journey. Not all may be present, and that's an argument that you make as well. But look for those examples, keep track of them, mark the page numbers because we'll start to record those coming up soon.